we're talking about a cultural problem, what's going on back at home, as was in my circumstance. And none of that is because of institutionalized policy. It almost seems like you guys refuse to accept that, Black students aren't performing well. You feel like you have to have this burden of responsibility when, in fact, if you actually wanted to help, you would look at the facts, re-examine the fact that it's not helping anybody, it's not helping Black Americans to artificially place them into universities, and you'd make effective change.
Hi everybody, welcome back to our channel. So Candace Owens was on Dr. Phil recently. I think she was on there last week, if I can remember. I think she was. But anyways, I like what she had to say about that. I think they were talking the affirmative action thing in colleges. Anyways, I was watching the Black conservative perspective. If you guys, I'm not sure if you guys follow him, but I was just going to kind of look at what she has to say and see what you guys think about it.
Welcome conservative author and TV host Danielle D'Souza-Gill and distinguished professor of education at San Diego State University, Dr. Luke Wood. So welcome to both of you. Now, let me start with you. Is it possible for white people to be discriminated against because they are the majority and discrimination involves power?
Absolutely. It is unequivocally possible. It happens all the time. This actually happens not only in specific instances, but this happens in a systemic way on our most elite college campuses. And I would also say that this is happening not just in education, but in the workplace.
Well, is it justified, though? Because if there has been disparity and if there has been discrimination, if there have been minorities that have been excluded for years and years and years and years, is this the way to start to bring some balance and diversity back to those universities and workplaces?
Absolutely not. Affirmative action has been going on for over 50 years, so this has been happening for a long time. And even now, we've actually seen that it's gotten worse in the sense that race relations are so poisonous, and many people on college campuses actually feel like, because of all of this that's happening, they feel like they're being pitted against each other.
Doctor, what do you think?
Well, I think I would very respectfully disagree. I certainly don't think that white people are disadvantaged in college admissions. In fact, I would say it is the exact opposite, which is why there are policies and practices in place now to try to alleviate the historical burden. It's like if you ever played Monopoly before, right? Imagine like you have a person who's playing Monopoly and they get to go around multiple times, right? And then like halfway through the game, someone gets to enter into the game. And then because they get a turn, right, then the accusation is, well, somehow that game is unfair. So the kind of accusation, what we would say is reverse racism, we really just view it as what we call race sliding. Race sliding is what happens when gaslighting is racial. And essentially, if you look historically, colleges and universities have prioritized admissions for students who are white. Why is that? When you admit a student, it's oftentimes based upon your grades, high school grades, and your test scores, ACT and SAT, which are being phased out due to COVID-19. But if you think about it, the SAT and ACT have historically measured access to resources, the neighborhood that you grow up in. It is not a measure of a student's drive, a student's motivation. It is really a measure of their access. And ultimately, we know that when things measure access, they really measure white privilege.
No, what they actually really measure is the type of household that they come from, okay? Because he is right in a certain sense that income, aka resources, definitely correlates with SAT scores. But again, a lot of that does come from family structure. Okay, are you coming from a two-parent household, right? How much do the parents value education? How much time are they spending reading to kids at a young age? Okay, again, a lot of that stuff is really just foundational in regards to the household, what the parents are doing in the household to help the child learn. Okay. That's not white privilege, right? That's just something that we should be promoting in society. That's how you would fix it, is more traditional family values and nuclear family structure. But again, these people don't really believe in that, right? They don't believe in that.
You know, that is interesting, though, because I feel like this is, again, it just always seems like we're handling black people with kids' gloves. Mm-hmm. You know, where, you know, the poor little black person is not getting a hand up and they're kind of getting pushed to the side, so let's just insert them, maybe even though they may not have the full education that they need to get into certain colleges. Like he's saying like it's white privilege is what he's trying to say. But I do think it's more of just a family structure.
But then it is funny because when black kids who are younger go to school and do what they're told, they're bullied and called white.
Right.
And it makes them not want to do a good job. They'd rather act like thug culture, or what we call black culture. How sassy black women, thuggish black men. You know what I mean? So as soon as you start making good grades, you get treated a certain type of way. But what Greg is trying to say is that our family structure is really the reason why a lot of black kids go to school and aren't prepared. Because Candace Owens actually did say on her her podcast one day that she was saying she was talking to Russell Brand at his house, and she was saying that because actually Asian kids are focused mainly their culture is focused mainly on academics. That she said she actually had a friend that was Asian, and when she would go home to her friend's house or whatever, her parents were like, "Did you get your homework done? You have to get an A." That wasn't the same at my house. My house was not that big. It's not that they didn't discourage me; they just didn't encourage me. They didn't care. You know what I mean? They just let me do what I was going to do. But that's not the truth in a lot of households. A lot of households demand that you make good grades because they want to see you go to a school. Unfortunately, in black communities, because of the 74% single mother rate, women can't do everything by themselves. Although they try to act like they can sometimes, they can't do everything by themselves. So it makes a child. You can't really watch your kids if you have to then go to work, come home, cook, clean, be the husband and the wife. You know what I mean? That's not so in intact nuclear families like Asian and most white families. They have a mother and a father, which means kids can't really get away with too much.
Yeah, and it's also interesting when you bring up single mother rate too and all that. It's interesting how I don't think people understand the how broad it is and how big of a problem that actually is in every area of a black person's life. Or a single parent's life to their children. Like it does kind of affect almost even their academic life.
You said that about us. My mother was a great mom, but we didn't get encouraged or discouraged. And a lot of it was probably because she was alone. And she put food on the table and she had to make money. But it's not that she didn't care about a report card. She absolutely did. But there wasn't a big push for us to be academic scholars. You know what I mean?
And I just don't buy into this argument that just because you're white, by definition, that means that you have more of an advantage no matter where you come from. I tend to believe that a black person who comes from a well-off family is going to have more of an advantage than a white person from a poverty-stricken family or area.
Candace, are we compromising standards if we do that because we haven't fixed the problem down the line? That's
correct. It is the policies are harmful also to the people that they purport to help. And we have all of the evidence there to look at. When you artificially place a black American into a school in which they do not belong based on their knowledge, doesn't mean that they go on to get A's. In fact, there was a black adjunct professor, you guys have definitely heard of him, Dr. Thomas Sowell, who was teaching at Cornell University, and he found that the majority of the black American students that were there were on academic probation. Now, these students were some of the smartest in the nation, but because they were artificially placed amongst their peers at Cornell University, they were failing on academic probation. These policies have never helped black Americans. It's just basically policies that are put in place to make people feel good, right? I feel like I'm doing something when in fact I'm actually creating harm. You either know the answers or you don't.
When you say...
Yeah, so just to kind of back up what Candace is saying here, this is a big debate at UNC when I was there. About the black male graduation rate, okay, which was substantially lower, significantly lower than that of the general population, okay? And there was a debate about, like, is UNC doing enough to support black male students? And I'm thinking to myself, well, what can a university do more to support black male students to make them get better grades, right? Is the university supposed to study for them? Is it supposed to make them go to class, right? It's supposed to make them do the things that, all students are supposed to do in order to get good grades. Again, being a black male student at the university, I graduated in 4 years, right? So I graduated on time. I think that personally for me, my skin color had nothing to do with my grades more so than the effort that I was putting in, okay? I put in very little effort and still got a 3.0. And at the time, I didn't like it. And I didn't decide to do something about it until like my junior year, where I was like, you know what? I'm actually gonna put in effort. And when I actually put in effort, lo and behold, I was able to actually, consistently get over a 3.5, right, in a semester. Okay. It had nothing to do again with my skin color holding me back or anything like that. What was holding me back is just simply my drive and my effort in what I was putting into it. But again, they framed this problem as it's some type of systemic issue where it's the university's fault. No, it's society's fault that black men are failing. They're partly right in the sense that when you let these people into a university when they're not ready, I don't think it helps.
We have.
Okay, can I just?
Yeah, I'm glad I'm pausing anyways. Yeah, go ahead.
So I can definitely, contest to what Greg is saying, because when I didn't go to college. I didn't want to go to college. But when I was in high school, my freshman year, I had Fs. I was a horrible student. You know what I mean? I went there, I played around, I wasn't a good student. And I remember being called into my counselor's office with other people that he was counseling. We were all failing. And it was like me and all these guys.
It was like
guys.
you.
It was like this, me, the girl.
I'm scared to know what was the ethnicity of the guys.
All black. And so we were all black, you know what I mean? And I remember Mr. Lehman, he was our
I remember Mr. Lehman.
and he said to us that if we do not at this point do better, then we won't graduate because you won't get the credits. So it was interesting to me that that was a kick in the pants for me. Because Greg's right.
Yeah.
Once someone told me.
Yeah.
And by the way, it was, my mother, who was doing her best, but it took a man to kind of, like a father figure in a sense.
That should show you.
Should sense that fathers matter, but he wasn't my father. He's a white man.
A man saying it.
A man saying it and mean it because they don't work in your feelings. They give you facts.
They give you not.
And so for some reason, that bothered me. But I will say, I went from an F student to when I graduated, I had way more credits than I was supposed to, and I was almost a B student. But let me tell you, Mr. Lehman called me in my senior year, and he said, you know that out of everybody in that group, that 13 men, you're the only one that's going to graduate.
Wow.
They all didn't graduate. He said, I'm calling you here because I thought, you have to have this, end of the, you're about to move on to college and do your life. And my senior year, he called me into his office and he was just like, he's like, so, I'm really proud of you. He's like, you just took that and ran with it. I did summer school. I caught up really fast because I went to summer school every year because I didn't want my senior year to be unfun. Yeah. So I went ahead and caught up. But he said, but I want to let you know this. He was just like, that I am proud of you because out of the 13 people that were, you were the only girl. Yeah. He was like, but out of 13 people that were in this group that I told you, he said, you know that you're the only one that's going to graduate.
But I would say though, when it's a sense of urgency situation, I would say that your personality, like when something needs to get done and it's told that it has to get done, when we get into deadline situations, I feel like you execute. Yeah. Like you're in execution mode. Right?
Say the other guys they didn't graduate, but I think it's because maybe in their personal homes, they weren't gonna go home to shame anybody. I didn't want to shame my mom.
Right.
And I always had that feeling. I never wanted to be a single mother because I didn't want my mother to work as hard as she did. My mother had, but also didn't want to shame her for not graduating. I didn't want to be, you know what I mean? Things like that. So I think that it is true that it doesn't always have to do with your races. Sometimes it does have to do with, because even I think white kids, if they come from a single parent home, it's the same thing.
That's what he said.
Yeah, because even in the prisons, white men that are in prisons, that are in the prison system come from single parent homes too.
Yeah, poverty will really kind of sometimes determines where a child's going to be, especially at school. I just want to add real quick though, when it comes to college in general, sometimes a lot of people are pushed to go to college, and it's like, I don't know if you guys agree with this or not, but I think a lot when he was saying a lot of people fail, a lot of these men are young men are failing in college. They're not graduating and stuff. Sometimes college isn't for everybody, and vocational schools or trade schools are a better fit for some of these people. Because I actually know people that went to college, did their 4 years and everything like that, men, and they're like, no, I really didn't even want to do that. What they end up doing is doing a trade school, and now a lot of them are mechanics, own their own we call garages, a lot of them are doing other things that don't require that type of college.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I think sometimes people are being pushed to go to, and they're getting inserted in with this whole affirmative action thing. And sometimes you didn't even have to do that because some people just don't, college is not for them. You know what I mean? They can do well financially with something they actually have a different passion for.
But with the guy, the doctor here, Dr. Luke, the thing that I don't understand about this is that he's a black man, so he knows the statistics.
Yeah.
So they never want to talk about family structure. They only want to talk about affirmative action. And the thing is like,
that's what
I am promotion of family structure because I think men need to be in the homes. Men have a different authority over their kids than mothers do. Yeah. And like I said, I think it was the male teacher, counselor that actually made me like intimidated to the point where I was just like, okay, you know what I mean? That I don't think maybe a female might have been able to do for me.
Black students at a particular school who aren't performing at that school as well, the immediate assumption that you're making is, well, maybe it's because they're not smart enough, they're not good enough, or they don't belong here. Whereas it could be about the experience that they're having at that institution. Professors who believe that they're not intelligent enough, that they don't have the capability to do the work, that they see them as criminals, deviants, dangerous, up to no good.
Oh, man. So it's the professor's fault, which, I mean, some of these professors are woke, but again, I mean, that's the funny part about this. Most academia is woke, but he's trying to say that these professors see them as criminals and yada, 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 but they're all woke, right? So if anything, they're probably given more leniency because they're black. And some of these students are still failing anyways, right?
So that was my point. Like when I was saying, what Greg is saying right now, is that I do think that the over affirmation of black people also creates, because when my white guidance counselor said to me, this is it, this is what it is. And he said it in an authoritative way. And he wasn't just affirming us because we were all black kids or something. That was back when you could be a real teacher and teachers weren't afraid to tell the truth.
No one was
you know what I mean? Right. And so I think when you tell the truth, and when you lay the law down, and you get the choice. You can either do bad or do good, or wake up or go to sleep, whichever one it is. And so putting blame on everybody but the actual student makes the student a scapegoat and be able to just ruin themselves because they can place blame on something else.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And then because these colleges now and high schools and stuff, because they're handling black people, minorities, with kids' gloves. It's very delicate. We call it Fabergé eggs. That one,
Jericho Green calls it Fabergé eggs.
Yeah, they're handling us like
racist.
Right, where they're handling us like a Fabergé egg.
I think that a lot of black kids don't have a great foundation.
Well, they spend a lot of time trying to fill voids. See, the thing is, your mind gets distracted when you don't have that kind of upbringing. When you have that, kind of like not sketchy upbringing, but kind of holes in your upbringing. You go through kind of life, especially your youth, trying to fill voids. Either some people get caught up with gangs. Is this how they fill voids? Girls get caught up with boys and get promiscuous. So these things happen. That is the important part of the nuclear family. The family structure is so important. And I don't like, honestly, this Luke Woods. I don't like that he is trying to put kind of the blame on the professors and not putting the accountability on the actual student.
That is what the reality is. And it hurts them to be at an institution that they just shouldn't be at. That is what's actually hurting them, letting them into the university when they shouldn't have been there in the first place.
Or they talk about them with the they statements. They're lazy. They don't care. They don't really belong here. They're only here for the financial aid.
I'm giving you actual facts.
No,
right?
I'm giving you actual facts based upon extensive
say, well, maybe they
research
just
that's been
don't feel
done.
good. But that's not the case. I mean, I went to university. I did not feel good, right? I didn't pull the best grades in high school, probably got into a better university than I should have gotten into based on my performance in high school. It wasn't because of my feelings. It's because I wasn't focused on it. And that, we're talking about a cultural problem, what's going on back at home, as was in my circumstance. And none of that is because of institutionalized policy. It almost seems like you guys refuse to accept that, black students aren't performing well, you feel like you have to have this burden of responsibility when in fact, if you actually wanted to help, you would look at the facts, re-examine the fact that it's not helping anybody, it's not helping black Americans to artificially place them into universities, and you'd make effective change.
But you're making the assumption that black students are academically inferior, and they're not.
No,
They're
you
some of
are
our most
actually.
brilliant
That's
students that we
the
have.
basic. No. That you are making the assumption that they are inferior.
You
It
just
is
said
why
that they
you
don't
want
belong there.
policies. I'm talking about the students that are based on the policies that you are defending right now, saying that we should have these policies that let them into these universities, not based on their skill set, but based on the color of their skin. So you are assuming that they are inferior.
Comedian Tyler.
Yeah, I mean, again, she's right. I mean, when you say, hey, look, we don't need to go off grades, right? We don't need to go off SAT. We don't need to go off, test scores, any objective measure of academic performance. You're assuming that these kids are not as smart, right? They're just not as capable. They can't do as well on these tests. Therefore, you have to lower your standards, which in my opinion, again, is bigotry. There are black kids that can perform and that are smart enough to perform just as well as everybody else. Those are the students you should be letting in, right? But the students that can't, no, you shouldn't let them in. You're not helping them by letting them into a university they don't belong to, and then they end up dropping out when you could have gave that spot to somebody who is actually worthy of being there and who was going to perform well. Again, that's the problem here.
Tyler Fisher claims he has been turned down by 3 agencies because they said they just weren't looking for white men to book at this time. Tyler, thanks for being here.
Thank you. I identify as a Latino female now, so just adjust my pronouns. Yeah. So I've been in the entertainment business for 17 years, and I think what we're not talking about is children right now. Thank God I had about 5 years where this was not happening, where race was not pounded over your head. This is destroying people's lives. Yeah. The manager that told me, I can't work with you because you're white, he was a pawn, And so it's so sad because I feel so bad for kids who won't have that chance. They're gonna go, oh, I'm told I'm white, so I'm not gonna go for it. What would you say to a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, no matter what their race is? What would you actually tell them? Should you give your job up? And let me ask you directly, do you think it was justified for me to be told, we can't represent you, you don't have the chance to now compete for jobs because you're white? Yes or no? Was that okay or was that not okay?
I think that what is described
yes
by
or no?
you.
Don't give me your little
let me
bubble
finish.
wrap.
What
Yes
is described
or no?
by you, someone telling you that you can't get that job because you're white, does not sound right to me.
I did a show the other day and they said, are you doing the next show? And I said, yeah. The guy said, I didn't know you were gay. He said, this is a gays only show. And so that's why Hollywood sucks right now, by the way, because they're not hiring based on talent. What do we do about heart surgeons, airplane pilots? How far do we want to go with this?
And they're going to go as far as they want to take it, right? This is what they're going to do. They're going to replace the straight white male pilots with women, okay? So-called women of color, okay? They're going to replace a lot of the essential professions in this country, again, like surgeons, doctors. I mean, they're already trying to get rid of the MCAT, right? They're trying to get rid of MCAT because apparently black students aren't smart enough to score high on the MCAT to compete with everybody else. Again, this is the type of stuff, man. Again, it's hard bigotry. And this type of discrimination is unacceptable. Again, these people are not liberal anymore, right? They are just radical progressives, okay? And these radical progressives believe in full-blown discrimination, okay? They believe in like Jim Crow discrimination. And they're totally fine with it. And it's just, in my mind, it's sad that this is where we're at in a society where you have people that are having this experience where they're just explicitly being told that, hey, you can't get this job because you're white. Again,
so this man is in the entertainment industry, and so the entertainment industry is a lot more upfront with saying stuff like that. Mm-hmm. We can't hire you because you're white. We can't hire you because you're black. You're too fat. You whatever. Mm-hmm. They kind of get away with that. But he is right. How far is it going to go?
Dylan Mulvaney, everybody knows the trans star on TikTok. Yeah. He just got a what do you call it when they get
sponsor?
Sponsor.
Yeah.
Well, actually, he didn't even ask for it. Bud Light sent him beer for March Madness. He doesn't even watch sports. He didn't even know what March Madness was, and he said it in his video. He said, I didn't know what March Madness even was, but they sent me beer, and they sent him a beer with his face, and it says celebrating 365 days of girlhood, and it has Dylan's face on there. And so they don't even know who their audience is.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? And they did this, just like what these people are saying, is that they're virtue signaling.
Mm-hmm.
They will replace anybody because they don't want to be called bigots.
Right.
But they don't realize that you sound dumb. You're giving a contract to a guy who doesn't even drink the beer, secondly, doesn't watch sports, and you're just virtue signaling to be doing it. So the same thing here. You only want black people in your school, not because they're good, because you don't want anyone to call your school bigoted.
Yeah.
And that doesn't help black people. It doesn't help the school. You know what I mean? It doesn't help people who actually go to school and work hard, including black people.
Right.
Would be towards somebody telling somebody you can't get this job because you're black. Those two things deserve equal amount of anger, okay, and pushback, because that is not what the point was when we decided that, hey, we're going to give equal rights to everybody. The point was not to get to a point where we're like, nah, we need to discriminate against whites, right? That's not what the goal was. So
I'm just someone who I don't really like feel sorry for me movements.
Yeah.
I never really have. I think it's weird when, you know, if you don't have, like, I think you have to have a faith in your life.
Yeah.
You know, a God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not the state.
Right.
Because the government isn't going to do anything to really help you. They make more, as you can see, they make more problems than they do, than they actually do fixing things.
Right.
More government always creates more problems. Less government makes you have to deal with yourself. It gives you the opportunity to have agency over yourself, and you can, you know, have faith in your God.
Yeah.
Don't be waiting for these people to give you opportunities and then you use your emotion and your color and your sex and your gender and all that to get your way.
Right.
Because that's not real success if you can do that.
I'm gonna look younger than him by the time he's my age. I don't care about them ugly ass kids in your race. Shut up. Plastic ass body. Little debilitated, enervated, emasculated, feeble, incapacitated, indisposed, emaciated, attenuated, tenuous body. I don't care about you. Shut up, you white monkey. You a dog in this country. You're a dog. You're nothing over here. You are a dog. Shut up. I'm black American. I'm over it.
It's not racism, right? Now let's just say, let's football that. It's a white person talking to a black person. What are we calling that?